Hello, hi, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, good early morning, from wherever you're watching this from, this short video. My name is Kevin Tue and I'm an Atlassian creator, and I'm so excited to bring you this video about the recently released report on the 1,000 days of distributed at Atlassian, which was released just a day ago by Atlassian from the team anywhere for us to just get to understand how Atlassian is implementing distributed work. So let's get on to it. Let's start by defining what distributed work. And as I was Googling, as you always do, I decided to just search what distributed work is. And funny thing, Atlassian is now defining what distributed work is, even on Google. So look at this. Just a day ago, looking at the definition of distributed work, this is what Google gives you. Distributed work describes how work gets done and not where. So distributed work is done online compared to shoulder, where we now see that there's more knowledge workers who now use the internet to collaborate, and even across that kind of a distributed network and the workforce, most of the time, and regardless, there's no regard to where they're working from. So Atlassian has created a storm in the tech ocean using this report, and it's a very actionable report. I saw it. It's a 40-page report. There's also a blog about it. You're going to just look at it. You can just search 1,000 days of distributed, and you're going to get this full report starting from here. So let's look at this. This is the Atlassian Work Life blog. And when you open it up, you're going to understand why Atlassian came up with this report and how impactful, how mind-blowing it is for all of you who are thinking about your companies. How are you actually implementing distributed work? And funny thing, when you look at what the report brings it all about, most companies are already distributed. And how does it happen? So Atlassian has these organization within it called Team Anywhere. So it's what we call the Atlassian's approach to distributed work. And since 2020, the different Atlassians have been able to choose where they work, not only just in one point in time, but almost every single day. So let's get a snapshot of what Team Anywhere is. And remember, this was not just an easy decision for Atlassian to do, and it has been quite a learning curve. And this is a gem of a report, if I can say. So this Team Anywhere snapshot. So it's 1,000+ days. You can imagine that is almost 3 years of study on what Team Anywhere has been able to bring out through this report. And having hosted over 1,600 team gatherings over just the past years, and all of them having an average of around 16 attendees who pretty basically are the Atlassians. So remember that this is one thing that comes out from the snapshot. Atlassians save approximately 10 days every year when these are the times that they would have been spent when they're commuting, getting to a location, being in office, working shoulder to shoulder. And you can imagine what 10 days can do. That is a whole vacation for someone. So remember, there are so many things to learn about this. And it's not about saying that in-person should be done away with. It is not what Atlassian is really advocating for. And when you go deeper into the report, we're going to see and know these are the things that show Team Anywhere from Atlassian is really working. And the good thing about this, when you're looking at this report and when you go to what I love about the report so much is that you don't have to set up an email or do this. Just go to the Atlassian site, get your PDF, a 40-page, fully detailed with a lot of actionable outcomes. And you're going to see that when you go to that site. So from this blog, you can see, how do we know that Team Anywhere is working? Atlassian is able to bring top talent much faster into the organization. And even the accept rate, as you can see, it has increased by 20%. And the number of candidates who are there for each and kind of different role has shot to 2 times higher since this implemented Team Anywhere. And remember, still, there's still a learning process. These are 1,000 days learns, means that there's also another 1,000 days maybe to learn and another one. So I really love this report and what it brings about, that the learning doesn't stop at 1,000 days. So Atlassian is still figuring out some of the effective ways of working. And how does it do this? Is we've been able to help the different members of staff in the organization to spend 13% less time in meetings. And now they've been able to report that there's a 32% improvement in focus. That's something, that's quite something, considering we're in a world where it's distracted, and even just getting someone's attention to focus on work. And we've been able to know that the time it takes to come back to focus after you've done a lot of context switching and maybe getting distracted on your phone is phenomenal. So I look at these Atlassian's intentional team gatherings have been able to boost connections by 27%. And when I was reading about the report, I really was amazed about the way the Atlassians have been intentional with the team gatherings and timing them around what we call the AMAs, which is a way of ensuring that there's this thing about the sync and async still within the report. What are the different best practices for synchronous when you're just having to organize and share information across the organization so that people can get it at different points in time, or when you want to have a session where people get content or being able to act upon, make a decision at almost the similar time. So I don't want to take it. I said it's short, so I'm going to get it. So these are some of the takeaways from those 1,000 days of basically the 3 years. So what was the methodology around these report and what was the survey that was done? So Atlassian was able to survey over 100 Fortune 500 executives and even Fortune 100 executives. And one of the things that they were able to find out in terms of this is that all the executives were able to agree on one thing. This most important thing is how teams work becoming more important than where they really work from. And some of the things that they came out, and I love this from this blog and the report, that the research shows that only 1 in 3 executives think that their return to office work policy has had even a slight impact on productivity. So what does that mean? Only about 33% of each and every time of all the executives that were surveyed thought that if they have a return to office policy, it will have an impact, even just a slightest impact on productivity. So that is quite something. So there's Molly Sands, who is the head of Team Anywhere Lab, has a video here showing how Atlassian has been able to use science. And remember this, to boost productivity, you need to innovate on how work gets done. You have to be very deliberate on that. And I love the fact that Atlassian brought this to light, that they have this Team Anywhere Lab, which is just a group of dedicated behavioral scientists within the organization who conduct several different experiments each quarter and iterate and innovate on these Team Anywhere policy and the decision. So you can be able to check what came about from these, but some of the different results that came out from the different experiments that were done is that when you time box around different priorities, it just works, and tracking the progress daily adds what we call additional productivity boost. So sometimes we track progress in different ways, maybe monthly, quarterly, but you can see that gives an additional boost. And you can see 65% of the different individual contributors and 71% of managers who took part in this experiment they say that they made more progress on top priorities than in a typical week. And they compared to those Atlassians who only restructured their time, those who also made it a point to track how they were doing each and every day, they reported a 36% improvement in how sustainable their workload felt. Have you ever felt that your workload is growing in giant leaps, and you don't know whether you're ever going to break it down and get it done and over with? Then what do you think about time boxing and tracking progress daily? The good thing about this report is so actionable. And when you go to the PDF 40-page report, you're going to see there's a page in it that shows you where you can focus on, for example, the challenges and some of the learnings that were there in the different pages. So those are some of the different results, as you can see there, already mentioned. So remember that there's one thing that this report came to play. In-person time is critical. Only thing that it doesn't have to happen every day. That is the most important thing to know about this when you're looking at this report. So look at this aspect from the perspective of Atlassian. Teams at Atlassian meet at least at one of the different offices about 3 times a year for the purposes of bonding and even to advance some of the different key critical projects. So these intentional team gatherings, they lead to a 27% increase in feelings of connection, which is quite good. No one has, there's nothing that is, for example, if you want to punish a human being, that is, you can see, put them in a prison, deny them of the pleasure of connecting with other human beings. And you can see this, especially among the new graduates within the organization and then the new hires, that the boost from these gatherings could even last 4 to 5 months. Can you imagine 4 to 5 months of work that has been boosted by having intentional team gatherings? So there's a whole graph there explaining that. And this is at the other point. You don't need an office to do great work, but remember that offices still matter. And Atlassian is always intentional, as you can see, to have these physical spaces and not only just have them there for the sake of having them there, but because of these 3 purposes: connection, company, belonging, and just having also a place to get work done. So there's some metrics around these physical spaces. For example, visitor engagement, some of the cost per visit, as well as the utilization. So Atlassian is also doing this to ensure that to check whether the offices are meeting the needs, and also some of the different necessary improvements. As you can see from the team in your lab, it's all about continuous improvement from the innovations that are being made. So you can be able to listen from Annie Dean, the global head of Team Anywhere, on this video on how they're using data to reimagine the offices. So some of the things that came out of this is that Atlassian was able to close some of the different offices, some of the office spaces in 2023, and reallocated some of the funds that came from this to innovating the other spaces and even opening new offices to meet the different changing employee needs. And that means something. So, for example, in September of 2022, Atlassian opened their Austin offices, and they were specifically designed and optimized for what? Team gatherings. Wow. A focus on just team gatherings, not just a place to go and work and having some desk, but having gatherings. That's quite something. I can't count any most tech, whether they've been able to say that we're having this office space and it is meant for just gatherings. So these spacious meeting rooms, conference center, and just a place to connect and collaborate. And then another point, employees should be able to understand your culture no matter where they sit. So remember that now, as more collaborations is getting more and more online, shifting from just the shoulder to shoulder to online, how this work gets done becomes are more important. For example, it's more of a cultural constant than the different offices, and you can be able to see what it is and some of the values that Atlassian is, for example, open company, noble, and to be able to bring these value to life. Remember that Atlassian always shares information through the conference pages and encourage people to leave the Atlassians to leave the comments, and if they have any different comments and questions and suggestions. So remember that this allows the members of staff to have a rich two-way discussions that ensure there's something cultivating that is useful and inclusive. So even there's another value here, build with heart and balance. And remember that the team in your lab is always helping in terms of experiment on better ways of working. And the mission they have is to help the Atlassians get more done faster and to be able to feel more confident and connected. And most importantly, to feel less exhausted at the end of each day. Who doesn't want that? So let's look at this. This is the highlight of that report. And still you can be able to see the fully fledged report, the 40-page report, and get more on how you can look at the different trade-offs, the open questions, and the challenges that the Team Anywhere approach has had and has faced, and what you can be able to implement for you in your organization at one point. So instead of focusing on where people work, you just focus on advancing how they work. And even instead of just mandating and requiring, you have to come, you have to attend, you have to be there in the office, I need to see you physically, you can focus on making the in-office experiences as meaningful as possible. And well, rather than relying only on the physical spaces to communicate your culture, you can focus on establishing these concrete values and putting them together, let them permeate into the way work gets done on a daily basis, so that it doesn't have to be, this is what we do, this is how we work, is organization XYZ. And then instead of rewarding people for the time, their face time, you can just be able to set clear goals and track progress against those goals. And this really hit home for me. Most of the time we default, we say you're going to have a meeting for an hour or 30 minutes or 15 minutes. So instead of defaulting to the normal 30-minute meeting, how about gathering the different key stakeholders and have longer creative brainstorms that facilitate fast, efficient, and discussions with what we call pages. And if you don't know how pages really work and the best practices around them, then you better get that report and see how Atlassian does it. So that's pretty much it on this kind of a concise version of the report. And at any point in time, you can, at the end of it all, you can download the full report. And I love this part of the page where you are able to, this is the report itself, where you're able to choose and look at what pages you can jump onto. So you can see this page, how to use the report. So if you want to just implement a similar location policy, you can jump to page 16. If you're just happy with how you're doing your location policy and you just want to know how to solve for the different challenges, for example, productivity, connection, and culture, you can jump onto page 18 and see what is there, and even in the subsequent pages. And finally, if you just want to get a brief overview of what Atlassian has learned, you can jump to page 38. So this, and as you finish up onto the last page of this report, also Atlassian shows you how it has been able to enable distributed work for different customers such as NASA, UNICEF, and Redfine. So that's pretty much from me. That was quite something. I hope I've given you an overview of why you should look at this report deeper. And maybe, just maybe, if you have something that you've seen from the report and you just want to unpack it in one or another, feel free to reach out and let's have this conversation. Let's make it actionable. Let's make distributed work work. Thank you.